Microsoft's Internet Security Acceleration Server, also known as ISA server, requires a couple things before you go ahead and try and install it. First thing is you want to make sure that you're running at least a P3 733 or higher processor, so chances are of using a P4 or anything above, you're not going to have any issues at all. You need to also make sure you're running Windows Server 2003 with Service Pack 1 as a minimum. So this will be Service Pack 1 or Service Pack 2 or any of the Windows Server 2003 R2 products. Those will all capable of handling ISA server. A minimum of half a gigabyte of RAM, so 512 megabytes is also required. And you'll typically want to make sure that you have at least 2 network adapters in it. Why? Well, ISA tends to need to be configured as a firewall device, and so you'll need to have one that's outward facing, so one of the interfaces that faces your outside network, and one that faces the inside network. Now, in some of the more specialized videos up here on the site, I will demonstrate an ISA server running with only a single network card, but there you rely on all the clients to actually know it's there. You can't put it in line in the system very easily. Okay. So, let's check to see how this system looks. I'm going to click on my Start button. I'm going to right-click on my computer and select Properties. Here you see that I'm running Windows Server 2003 R2 Standard Edition with Service Pack 2. I've got a P4 processor, and I've got half a gigabyte of RAM. Everything looks good there. My server's name is called ISA Server. Doesn't matter what you call it name-wise. And everything else should be in pretty good order. Now, under the Start menu, Control Panel, Network Connections, let me right-click on that and click Explore, and let's set up our network so that we know what things are looking like. We'll have 2 network cards, one called Local Area Connection and one called Local Area Connection 2. Well, let's start with Local Area Connection. When I go and I take a look at this one, and I look at the Support tab, we see that this one I've manually configured to have an IP address of 192.168.1.254. And that is the range that I'm using on my outward side of my network. That's the one that's connected on the network before it hits my physical firewall. My physical firewall is located at 192.168.1.1. And so I've set this at the other end at .254. Now, there may not be anything else on this particular network. So let's say you're doing this as a small office, and this is your home, your home DSL router or your business-grade DSL router. That's what's actually going to be your translation to your public addresses. It's not recommended to put ISA directly on the internet. It's sort of an inner boundary firewall that can look up above just the layers 1 and 2 and 3 of the OSI model, where it's just purely relying on IP addresses. When we talk about using the ISA server, we're talking about analyzing what's going on inside the packets coming back and forth. So we can look at HTTP requests differently from FTP requests, and not just relying down on the IP addresses, the direction of the connection, and what port numbers are being used. Okay, so this is my outside address, and that's why it's important that I have the default gateway on that one, because that's where my TCP/IP stack will send all the data. Now, if we take a look at Local Area Connection 2 here, if I right-click on that and click Properties, and then, I didn't mean to click Properties, right-click and just click on Status, and then the Support tab, I see here this is on the inside of my network, which I've numbered with the 172.16 network, and this host happens to be 1.1. And so all my client PCs are going to be pointing to this address for if they're going out on the internet, if we're interested in using the proxy server functions of our ISA server. Okay, so we've got a 2-interface server here. So one that faces the outside and one that faces the inside of our network. So we're ready now to install the ISA server. So to do that, you're going to want to put in your ISA CD-ROM. And I've put it in my system here. And when I go click on my CD-ROM drive, the auto run starts up. Now, before I actually start off with the installation, let me just describe some of the key differences between the ISA Server Standard Edition and the Enterprise Edition. Now, the Standard Edition is ideally suited to sit as a standalone Windows 2003 server, and in my opinion, should not be part of your Active Directory domain or anything like that. It allows it to operate independently And remember, something that's touching the internet side of the world, if somebody was to attack it and gain control of it, you don't want them to have any additional access into the rest of your network. Now, the Enterprise Edition of ISA has some more capabilities above and beyond what Standard Edition can do. One of these is to heavily integrate itself with the Active Directory. It can actually modify your Active Directory schema, and so that it can support some specialized functionality. Now, that part says that your ISA server must be part of your Active Directory to take advantage of those features. Unfortunately, this does introduce some security risks, because should somebody get a hold of the ISA server, they now have a system that's part of the domain. But the benefit of integrating your ISA server in with your Active Directory says that you can make people log into it before they can have any access to the rest of your websites or other things you may publish to the or utilize the ISA server to publish to the internet. So there are a little bit of costs and benefits to each of those. And so what you want to do is evaluate which product you actually need. If you're looking at something just to protect, say, your Exchange server, then I'd recommend using Standard Edition, where I position it in the demilitarized area of my network so that the outside world comes to my ISA server, and then my ISA server goes and requests the pages from the inside network, which contains my Exchange server. But if you're utilizing it as a proxy server type function, where your users are from the inside of your network are passing through the proxy server so that you can report on their utilization of the web, you can monitor them and control what sites they can actually go to, then you might consider looking at integrating your ISA server in with your Active Directory, because it allows for a lot more detailed reporting without making the user specifically go through extra steps to log in or things like that. All right, we're ready to install our ISA Server 2006 Standard Edition, and that'll be the next video.